It's Wednesday, July 24. In the headlines, the government to give grants to Jamaicans whose homes were affected by Hurricane Beryl. In business news, National Housing Trust targets outstanding contributions from MSMEs. Regionally, UN representative says SIDS have been disproportionately affected by climate change. And in sports, steel pan players win T10 Blast. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Families whose houses were destroyed by Hurricane Beryl are set to receive up to $400,000 in grants from the government through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. Portfolio Minister Pernell Charles Jr. shared the details at Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief. Minister Charles Jr. says his team has assessed almost 9,000 households of those affected by the passage of Hurricane Beryl. However, the priority will be given to those who were severely affected, totaling just about 500.
We looked on the cost index and the needs of the households, and we have defined categories based on the impact from totally destroyed, severely damaged to minor damaged, and allocated to each respectively 400,000, 150,000 and 50,000. Now, we understand that this will have to be supplemented, and so we are also cognizant that our partners from Food for the Poor, our partners from World Food Programme, from UNICEF, from the Jamaica Red Cross, from ADRA, from the Salvation Army, and the other international assistance and diaspora stakeholders will also be contributing to the process of supporting this recovery.
The Bank of Jamaica has warned that the downward trend in inflation may be disrupted by the passage of Hurricane Beryl. The Governor, Richard Biles, provided this update during the Standing Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday,
with preliminary assessments indicating that Jamaica's agriculture sector has suffered over $4 billion in losses due to Hurricane Beryl. Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Biles, while providing an update during the Standing Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, has warned that this significant disruption could impact the country's declining inflation rate.
The declining trend in inflation that we have recently experienced is expected to be interrupted temporarily by the passage of Hurricane Beryl. As we know, the system affected a significant portion of Jamaica's agricultural infrastructure and supply, and will drive pricing decisions for selected starchy foods and vegetables over the next 2 to 3 months.
The BOJ governor stated that the bank is committed to monitoring agricultural prices and adjusting its inflation forecast as needed.
The bank is still actively assessing this and other influences on the outlook of the CPI. But in the context of expected higher agricultural food prices, inflation may temporarily track above the bank's target range of 4 to 6% for 2 to 3 months, starting in August.
Despite this, Governor Biles predicts that the inflation rate will return to the target range of 4 to 6% by the end of the year.
Inflation is, however, expected to return to the target range towards the end of the year as the agricultural sector rebounds, and generally for inflation to remain within that corridor.
For the news on PBCJ, I am Danita Rodney.
The Jamaica Public Service, JPS, has asked the Office of Utilities Regulation, OUR, to review the mechanism for calculating estimated bills, specifically for customers impacted by prolonged power outages as a result of Hurricane Beryl's passage 3 weeks ago. The move is in response to its previous decision to issue estimated bills, as several areas of its operations were disrupted due to the passage of the hurricane. The matter was addressed by Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport Daryl Vaz and his opposition counterpart Philip Paulwell in Parliament on Tuesday. Energy Minister Daryl Vaz says he had sent the initial proposal for the distribution of estimated bills to the OUR.
Yesterday, Madam Speaker, I had a meeting in between Cabinet with the 3 government directors on the JPS board. Firstly, to find out whether or not they were aware of the decision by JPS to send out what I call the insensitive and unacceptable estimated bills for persons who right now don't have electricity.
Meanwhile, Minister Vaz says he is not satisfied with the speed of the JPS's restoration efforts. Reading from a report from the utility provider, he notes that 19,000 customers are still without electricity.
The JPS says that there are 92 customers without service, and the projected full restoration for the parish of Kingston and St. Andrew is July 30th. For St. Catherine, they say that there's 1,267 customers that have not been restored, and the projection date for that is July 24th. For Clarendon, they say 3,107, and the restoration date is July 27th. Now, those of us who are in this house and on the ground will know that as I read these numbers, the numbers that are on this document as it relates to what is happening on the ground in the constituencies do not align.
According to Minister Vaz, the data does not include customers in St. Elizabeth who are set to regain access to electricity in August. He notes that persons can see the dates for restoration on JPS's website. For his part, opposition spokesperson on energy Philip Paulwell says the previous decision to send out estimated electricity bills were unconscionable.
Especially because it would provide JPSCO with an undeserved windfall. And it was being done in the context of sufferation. And it is wrong. The minister has spoken about force majeure. Any village lawyer will tell you that in any contract that is done, there is a provision for acts of God.
In the meantime, JPS has announced a Hurricane Beryl relief program, which includes providing discounts for approximately 350,000 JPS residential customers. The company said it will be giving a 20% discount on bills of customers who use 150 kilowatt an hour for electricity or less for the month. Healthcare workers have an opportunity to further their education through the government's $75 million scholarship fund. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Dunstan Bryan, says the ministry has commenced discussions with the principal of the University of the West Indies and key personnel and other institutions of training on upskilling of healthcare workers, focusing on options for enhanced training and retention. It will be doing the same with the health councils, nursing and medical that govern the profession. Mr. Bryan says, quote, "We are seized with the urgency to do so, to ensure that our healthcare workers have what they need to perform at their optimum, which includes training and educational opportunities," end quote. This comes as Jamaica celebrates Healthcare Workers Appreciation Month under the theme, Honoring Commitment, Service and Sacrifice. Mr. Bryan was speaking at a church service held to commemorate the event at St. Peter and Paul Roman Catholic Church in St. Andrew recently. Time now for the Business Report with Denise Williams.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Business Report. I'm Denise Williams, your guide through the latest happenings in the world of business. Amber Group has acquired a 50% equity stake in popular taxi service company on-time taxi, which will now be rebranded as Amber On Time, reported by Our Today. All on-time taxis will be equipped with physical panic buttons for passengers with armed security responses. The platform will be backed by Amber Connect's real-time tracking with AI-enabled route and dispatch management functions. Advanced artificial intelligence dashcams will allow driver behavior monitoring, promote safer driving habits, and help reduce the likelihood of accidents, thereby lowering insurance premiums for operators. The National Housing Trust is hoping to recoup some 6.7 billion Jamaican dollars in outstanding contributions linked to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, and charitable organizations. Damian McNally, Assistant General Manager at the NHT in charge of compliance in the Contributions Management Department, says the organization is now running an amnesty which will benefit some 8,200 businesses in these categories. Iron Rock Insurance Company Limited reports first quarter net profit of $5.53 million. Iron Rock Insurance Company Limited for the 3 months ended March 31, 2024, reported a 29% increase in insurance revenue totaling $401.45 million compared to $310.41 million in the corresponding period last year. Reinsurance contracts expense amounted to $251.63 million compared to the $171.62 million in 2023. This represents an increase of 47% year over year. Consequently, insurance service contracts expense decreased by 3% to $135.96 million compared to $139.59 million for the 3 months ended March 31, 2023. Insurance service results increased by 1,819% to close at $13.86 million compared to 2023 with a deficit of $807,000, while investment return increased by 79% from $16.20 million in 2023 to $29.07 million in 2024. Consequently, other income decreased by 107% from $3.21 million in 2023 to a loss of $229,000 in 2024. During trading for the period of July 23, 2024, the following companies represent the top 3 most active stocks that investors bought and sold on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited with 4,947,662 units, amounting to 22.43% of the market volume in terms of equity sales. Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 2,520,496 units, amounted to 11.43% of the market volume in terms of equity sales. Jamaica Fiberglass Products Limited with 2,402,260 units, amounted to 10.89% of the market volume in terms of equity sales. Over on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, trading on July 23, 2024, registered a volume of 247,600 shares, crossing the floor of the exchange valued at $1,557,889 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 88 cents. Massey Holdings Limited was the volume leader with 139,153 shares, changing hands for a value of 514,377 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 44 cents, followed by JMMB Group Limited with a volume of 80,000 576 shares being traded for $84,576.38. Moving from the money moves of investors, executives, and companies on the regional stock markets, we turn to the Forex market. On July 23, 2024, the Bank of Jamaica reported that US $46.6 million was bought from Forex traders, while US $67.9 million was sold to Forex traders. Buying directly from the Bank of Jamaica, foreign currency traders sold the US dollar for $157.19 and bought the US dollar for $155.45. The difference between the buy and sell rate was $1.74, which represents a profit for Forex traders for every US dollar traded. Canadian Forex traders earned a trading profit of $1.13 from transactions at the Bank of Jamaica. The Canadian dollar was sold at $114.78 and bought for $113.65. For traders looking at the British pound, they pocketed a profit of $1.84, selling it for $202.80 and buying it for $200.96. For our credit report tip of the day, we continue to put the spotlight on your career as a way to boost your credit score, build your credit worthiness, and open doors to greater opportunities and financial freedom. So we have two more actionable steps for you. One is look at employee benefits. Take advantage of employer-sponsored benefits such as retirement plans, health savings accounts, and employee stock purchase plans. These can contribute to your financial stability and credit worthiness. Then there's continuing education. Invest in professional development to enhance your skills and increase earning potential. Advanced qualifications can lead to better job opportunities and higher income, strengthening your financial position. And with that, we wrap up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams. Appreciate your company. Stay well informed. Stay ahead of the curve. Until our next update, take care.
In regional news, Barbados highlighted the devastation of Hurricane Beryl on Caribbean states and its link to climate change at an international forum in Ethiopia. Deputy UN Representative Karita White emphasized that Barbados and small island developing states, SIDS, are disproportionately affected despite their minimal contribution to the crisis. She notes that frequent and severe climate-related disasters undermine development prospects. Her comments were made during the preparatory committee for the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in Addis Ababa. Ms. White called for an ambitious action plan to provide development financing over the next decade.
We are now faced with the harsh reality of almost annually rebuilding ports, villages, schools, redirecting funds earmarked for sustainable development, and SDG implementation towards reconstruction and disaster risk reduction efforts. The relentless cycle of destruction and rebuilding means that countries like Barbados cannot finance recovery from public coffers alone. We are forced to seek external financing under onerous terms, pushing us deeper into a debt trap. It is against the backdrop of challenges such as these that we must strive for an outcome that is nimble, fit for purpose, and relevant to today's realities. Initiatives such as the Bridgetown Initiative, the Paris Pact for People and Planet, and the SDG stimulus provide us with a clear roadmap. These frameworks illustrate how the international community can help correct the economic imbalances faced by developing countries. We must strive for a more responsive, fairer, and inclusive financial system. Excellencies, the work we commit to this week is crucial. We must ensure that our outcomes lead to real, actionable benefits for our citizens. Barbados remains steadfast in its commitment to working with member states to achieve these goals. Together, we can build a resilient, sustainable future.
At least 2 local officials believe the soon-to-be-launched Connect Carib ferry service will be a game-changer for local trade, agriculture and tourism. The Prime Minister's Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana, Althea Wiggins, along with the chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Javon Griffith, have both welcomed the news of the project. They foresee it boosting the respective sectors and opening new avenues.
When you have Connect Carib that is going to be moving from Trinidad to Barbados to Guyana to Suriname, and he gives a transit period of 4 days, this is going to deliver a lot of the goods fresh, on time and daily. And I would say to you that at an intersessional meeting in 2020, our Prime Minister says that we need a maritime bridge. We need a maritime bridge to transport the goods regionally.
Of course, we do have an issue with regional airlift in terms of cost. Ferry service has proven itself over the years to be more cost effective. So we're looking to see a significant drive towards increased visitor arrivals, increased leisure arrivals spend. We're also looking at seeing increased occupancy for our member properties. Because we now have a cheaper format for travel within the islands, we're looking to see persons who may not necessarily have the means to travel be able to travel between the islands for the first time.
Another milestone for the Bahamian government was set on Monday as the Senate has greenlit a compendium of bills that will create a controlled system for cannabis use for medicinal and religious purposes. We have more in this story.
Leading debate in the upper chamber, Attorney General Ryan Pinder stressed the importance of decriminalizing cannabis, especially for the Rastafarian faith. Pinder says government believes it's the right thing to do.
We do not think it's right to criminalize an entire religion because of the use of their sacrament in their religious activities. We don't believe that. And that is why we have taken the approach that we've taken. And we're making the change. And yes, not everybody's going to be happy with the middle ground that we have chosen. But that's why it's a middle ground.
The bills will remove cannabis from the list of dangerous drugs and allow for the expungement of records for individuals convicted of possession of 30 grams of or less of marijuana. Pinder made his case by outlining the evolving view throughout the Caribbean that Rastafarians have a constitutional right. When it was debated in Parliament, Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Michael Darville explained that children and pregnant women will not be prescribed medical cannabis. While the official opposition says it supports the bill, F&M Senator Michael Barnett Ellis says the bills are a step forward but far from perfect, suggesting pharmacists should be the only avenue to provide cannabis.
But if we are going to control it, then it really should only be dispensed by pharmacists. And pharmacists should also sell wholesale to suppliers such as the Rastafarian congregation. Madam President, details are the things that make legislation work.
In sports, we put the spotlight on regional cricket. The Chicago Steel Pan players overcame the odds at the Queen's Park Oval when they defeated Soca Kings by 6 wickets, which saw them crowned champions of the Dream 11 Trinidad and Tobago T10 Blast.
It was the climax of the Dream 11 Trinidad and Tobago T10 Blast, with the day beginning with the Chicago Steel Pan players restricting the Scarlet Ibis Scorchers to 113 for 4 to win by 12 runs as they went on to face off against the Soca Kings in the final. On to the finals as both teams were greeted by members of the TNT Cricket Board ahead of the highly anticipated match. It was smooth sailing to begin proceedings when the Soca Kings took to the crease as the early partnership of Kadeem Allen and Shatrohan Rambaran got the Kings to 16 runs after the first over, before the rain got involved to delay proceedings. After the delay, Allen was then dismissed when he was scored by Ickwick Craig with the score at 25 for 1. Rambaran then picked up the mantle as he dispatched this 6 to get the Kings to 42. Rambaran then struck again with another 6 straight down the crease. With a third boundary, the Soca Kings would finish on 61 for 2 after Dejon Charles was caught to end their innings. With the weather striking again, the Duckworth-Lewis method was implemented, resulting in Steel Pan players chasing a reduced target of 57 runs in 4 overs. The Pan players got off to a bad start when Sidel Diaz was caught on the second ball by Charles to leave the pitch scoreless. A bad start then turned into a nightmare when the experienced Dinesh Ramdin also left scoreless when he was caught on the third ball in the first over. Craig's LBW wicket completed the third dismissal of the first over as the Steel Pan players were stuck on 9 runs for 3. Kelvon Calawan stepped up to pick up the pace to bring up the score to 41 for 3, with them needing 16 runs from 6 balls. The Pan players began positive, with a Navin Badesi boundary to start the over. The hearts of the Pan players nearly sunk as Badesi was caught with 9 from 4 balls needed for victory. Stepping up to the crease was the man they called Baby, Jelani Seals. A 6 from Calawan and then another from Seals sent the Steel Pan players into a frenzy as they won by 6 wickets. The award for Best Batsman of the final, scoring 30 runs, was none other than Kelvon Calawan. Winning the award for most runs of the tournament, with 293 in 9 matches, went to Kadeem Allen. Man of the match went once again to Kelvon Calawan. Player of the tournament, with 219 runs and 9 wickets, was Sidel Diaz. Captain Dinesh Ramdin collected the winner's trophy as his team earned a cash prize of $100,000. The champions of the Dream 11 TNT T10 Blast, the Chicago Steel Pan players. Adrian Lazar, TTT Sport.
That's it for the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.